Hi, and welcome to Wrong Way. And this is a device I've been meaning to test for over 2 years. This is the Dualtron Man EX Plus, a crazy cyber foot scooter that can go over 60 kilometers an hour. So strap yourselves in because this is going to be a banger. So let me tell you more about it.
Wrong way.
Did I show you Burnout Mode as well?
No.
So this is Burnout Mode.
Lovely.
But before we get into the review, I'd like to thank FastRide for sending me over this unit for testing purposes, and this is not a sponsored review. I'd also like to thank Monocat and Jacek so much for helping me making this video. You guys are amazing. Alright, you've seen that this thing is absolutely bonkers. We'll get into the nitty gritty and specs in a bit, but how do you even ride this thing? So first you want to put your foot into the back wheel and then, forgot the helmet. Alright, let's start over. Maybe let's first grab the remote, which is connected with a cable to the Dualtron Man. However, it not only has the accelerator, but also a cable actuated disc brake. Whenever you press on it, even slightly, you also activate the electronic brake. The Dualtron Man is rear-wheel drive, and thanks to its, by the way, very powerful hollow motor, you can put your foot normally where a rim would be. The same thing applies to the front, but there we just have a rim without the motor. So with the remote in hand, you will first need to put in the foot into the back wheel of the Dualtron Man and then into the front one. The swing arm has to be close to the ground. And you can set up this foot scooter both in goofy and regular configuration, just like a snowboard. The Dualtron Man has specially shaped footplates with rubber pads underneath them, which keeps it rested on its side and makes the balance when you're on it a bit easier when stationary. Don't worry too much about balance though, because the Dualtron Man has a pretty good weight distribution. But then what you want to do is lift the front wheel, so sort of push into the back of your heel to move the front wheel into a position where it's perpendicular to the ground. Slightly apply a bit of throttle and the back wheel will follow. Well, hopefully at this point you're riding. All these things are kind of weird to explain because, well, it's a weird machine. It takes some getting used to put the feet in correctly, and it's also important to apply pressure to the side of your shins, there where you can see the foam on the Dualtron Man. Now you can see that the machine has a steering footrest. The front wheel turns when you turn with your foot. It's a foot bar. Yeah, it's a foot bar. This type of steering allows you to have some pretty nifty features and small turning radius when being slow, but also quite a bit of stability when going fast. In the area where I have my feet, I also have these additional straps which make the ride a lot better and a lot more predictable. I think they should be coming stock. So now I can see that I can both turn with my left foot as a foot bar, but then if I go faster, you mostly turn with leaning your body, sort of more like a EUC or a skateboard. The great thing about it is, compared to a skateboard, that the faster you go, the more stable you become, because the big 14-inch wheels just provide a lot of centrifugal force to keep you balanced. However, it is not a perfect system and it needs definitely a lot of time to get used to, and even if you're used to it, sometimes you just hit your shins hard and it hurts. I think there should be more padding on the Dualtron Man, and I already added some padding myself, but still, if I'm going over train tracks or really bad surfaces or just cracks in the road between the bike path and the street, it sort of wants to throw me off or hurt me. You have to strike the right balance between bending your knees, pressing your shins against the machine, or just free floating on the Dualtron Man whilst holding on to the straps. A major design flaw of this mechanism is also that you can't turn as sharply to the right, in my case with the regular configuration, as to the left, because the machine is always slightly tilted, so in one direction you can turn sharper than in the other. If I risk turning sharply to the right, I might just touch and slide on the road with the rubber pads of the Dualtron. In the other side it's also possible, but a bit more difficult. The clearance there is also not the highest. Here on our Wrong Way channel, we always test devices to their limits, and the Dualtron Man is no different. With a 1800 watt-hour battery, a 60 volt system, a single 2.8 kilowatt motor, the Dualtron Man sounds pretty promising in its performance abilities. First up is the range. And with my usual riding style, I managed to go 60 kilometers on one charge until 5%. I decided not to go further because this machine is very difficult to carry when you're not riding on it. I also had to make a couple stops in between because, well, my feet were getting sore. However, this result is pretty good for such a machine. Next up was the acceleration test. 2, 1, go. On the left lane. Lots of vibrations. Initially, I thought that the Dualtron Man will be fast off the line, but to my surprise, it actually gains the most speed when going fast, and it reaches the 60 km/h mark at the same time as the VSAT 10 Plus with two 1400 watt motors. That's insane, but I think that's due to the ergonomics and aerodynamics of riding such a vehicle. Notice that if I go full speed through the leaves, pretty much no leaf gets excited over that. They just don't move. If I go with a unicycle or a scooter through the leaves, it will just go everywhere. I think the Dualtron Man is really aerodynamic, as well as the rider in a sideways stance. And that helps with reaching the maximum top speed quicker and more efficient. Just to make sure, I made a couple more acceleration tests, so it's not a fluke, and usually the Man reaches 50 km/h or 31 miles per hour in around 10 seconds, which is faster than a lot of dual motor scooters. In the most powerful setting of the throttle, this thing really rips, and I love this feeling of acceleration. However, for most day-to-day use, I would advise to throttle it down a bit so it's not that jerky. Especially at lower speeds, this thing just rips from underneath your feet. You really need to take that into account and balance with your body. Up to 50 km/h in the most powerful setting, it just makes you smile with acceleration. You can easily reach speeds in the neighborhood of 60 km/h and above, and with the right patience and long enough track, you can go even over 65 km/h.
However, in those higher speeds, over 55 I'd say, the front wheel starts to shake a lot, and I'll tell you the reason for that in a later part of the video. So yeah, you know this thing is fast, but what if you need to brake? One of the reasons why it took me so long to make the review of the Dualtron Man is that it has so many features and so many weird details. And braking is one of them. As you can see here, this is a 25-degree incline and I'm braking with a speed of, I don't know, 2-3 kilometers an hour, going down easily with just using the electronic brake of the square wave controller. The mechanical brake is pretty bad actually, and I'll talk about it later, but now I'll talk about the most functional brake, which is the regenerative brake in the Dualtron Man. And for the longest time I was riding this machine with the weakest setting of the electronic brake, being oblivious to the fact that you can have even more powerful electronic braking in this device. You have 5 modes of regenerative braking, and the biggest difference is in the lower speeds. I mean below 40 kilometers an hour and especially below 20. So in the weakest setting it will just coast a lot, especially when going slower, and in the most powerful setting it locks up the tire from speeds around 30 or 40 kilometers an hour, bringing you to a stop in relatively the same distance as a EUC.
Oh, start!
So here you can see comparisons of the weakest and the most powerful mode, and yeah, the difference is huge. However, there is one more caveat, which is that the higher your battery voltage, the more charge you have, the worse the braking will get. So the less battery you have, the smaller the braking distance, which is, you know, kind of logical when you ride a scooter, but not when you ride a foot scooter where you sort of depend on this electronic brake. In the end, the electronic brake is powerful, especially when going speeds under 40 kilometers an hour. At 65, well, at the beginning you don't feel anything in terms of braking. In the end, I think it's actually pretty good. I still miss the fact that it's just on or off. You can't dose the brake, like just give 10% or 50. It's always full on or full off. And in this case, I would like to have a remote, like in a skateboard, where I can select how strong I want to brake. But does it have torque? Let's check it out with my usual incline tests.
Easy!
Like a champion.
Wow! I'm impressed. Well, now we have to go to the 30.
There's no doubt that the Dualtron Man is really torquey. This incline test you saw before was failed by the dual motor Dualtron Eagle Pro. This 30-degree incline test was failed by the Wolf Warrior, and with the right stance, the Dualtron Man just kicks his ass. The Dualtron Man with its performance is outstanding, and still, years after its release, beats many of the current performance scooters. Even though I tried a lot, I tried as hard as I could, and I hurt myself in the process, changed the settings, I couldn't get it up on my 35-degree slope.
Nope.
Still got higher than the Wolf King, but that is not a pass. Nevertheless, hats off to you, Mr. Dualtron Man EX Plus.
Nie podjedzie.
Yeah. Alright, but let's also talk about the features and the build quality of this rare device. Alright, so the overall build quality of the Dualtron Man is
pretty solid. When it comes to the plastics, when it comes to the rubber pieces here underneath, the swing arm, every screw is also very tightly screwed in. When I was installing these Dualtron Man straps, which you can see here, these are bolted with 4 screws. Well, I had to buy additional screws because the screws in the kit were too short, but the ones that were stock inside of the Dualtron Man were properly tightened, and I think also with Loctite. Everything is very tightly assembled. There is no clacking when it comes to the shell, when it comes to the construction, but there are some perks that are very poor quality, which I'm going to get into in a second. But first, let me show you the I/O here. On-off switch for the lights, and the lights, very practical of course, as usual mini motors, because they shine straight at your foot. Essentially, this one isn't visible from the front, and this one only if you have the handlebar or the foot bar positioned in the right way. However, the tail lights are pretty cool. I mean, tail light, because this one stopped working after, I think, 100 meters without a fall. This tail light is very bright. It also has a brake light here visible. When it comes to the remote, made out of plastic, there's a mini motors writing here, so it's bespoke made. This foam is pretty nice. The response of this is also pretty good, but this quality is also pretty solid. All in all, this thing fell a couple times with me and without me, so yeah, pretty solid. Here we have a external battery port if you wanted to have a battery in your backpack and charge the Dualtron Man on the go. And this is the charge port, GX16-3. You charge this thing with a, I think, 1.5 amp charger, very slow charging, around 12 hours. We have a main battery cutoff switch. So with this switch, you can turn off all the battery functionality. I think this is a great thing to have on every PEV. Very cool. And here you can see the display. And on this display, let me turn it on. Very similar to a scooter display, by the way. You can see very little actually. If you look like from here, it's not visible. Very bad angle, and you can't see the display while riding. So this is one of the only devices that I was riding where I can't actually check my battery when riding. So I have to always stop and then check out, here is the battery level, here is the mode. We can select 5 modes, and these will give you a different top speed. And sadly, the initial pull of the Dualtron is very strong in every mode. It just wants to go. Let me show you. This is in first mode. And now I'll show you the same thing in 5th mode. It's basically the same, just the top speed changes a lot. I was riding mostly in 5th mode, but I found 3rd mode to be also a good optimum when it comes to city riding. It will just go a bit slower than around 45 or 50 kilometers an hour. You can see the speed, which you will never see because you can't see the display. The display should be like up here or something. And here we have different parameters. So now we see the voltage, 62 volts. Then we see runtime, how long it's on. This is the odometer. I have the 213 kilometers. This is something, I don't know what. And that's it. But you have also the extended display here, which you can also see on other scooters. P0, P1, P2. All of these settings are very similar to the Dualtron scooters. So like soft start, hard start. And with these settings, 0 through 5, you will get a more responsive or a less responsive throttle. With the 5th preset, the FOOTSCOOTER is still very powerful, especially from the get-go. But with 0, it's just like beast mode. Then we have P8, which is the maximum motor power of the scooter. Then we can select battery saving mode, just like different Dualtrons. Then we have the regenerative brake, PB, which is the brightness of the display. MPD is cruise control. I would never put on cruise control on this scooter. Moving on though, we can see that there is also some padding here. I put some additional padding here because this was just too thin, and the placement of this particular piece here, where the cable goes into the machine, is very unfortunate. This can really hurt your shin, so that's why I put that here. And yeah, overall you can hurt yourself a lot with this device. You just need more foam to protect you. And sadly the disc brake here is pretty much garbage, the mechanical brake. Tried to adjust it twice, and every time after like 20 or 30 kilometers it stopped working properly, so I'm just working with the electronic brake. But let me tell you about the biggest flaw of the scooter. And this is on the other side. and it is where it is, and it's this. They actually put a valve into the tire. It seems like they were doing the Dualtron Man, and then they were like, oh wait, we forgot where to put the valve into the rim. So they put it into the tire, and this is a terrible solution. Not only can this break off, it also rubs against the enclosure of the Dualtron Man. So when I have a higher pressure, which is actually indicated on the Dualtron Man, it will hit against this enclosure. And sometimes it's clicking in certain positions. I mean, I don't have to, I think, explain much why this is a bad idea. And also in the back, it's the same story. And here you can also see the caliper, which is very huge. However, this thing just doesn't do much, and it's really close to the ground too. Now, those are some flaws of the Dualtron Man, and naturally the position, the sideways stance doesn't help in regular day-to-day riding, as you have to always look to your side and you can't see that well in both directions. It also provides strain on longer rides. But with all of these flaws, I think this machine is still amazing, and the capabilities of this device, even with its weird features and weird design, are still outstanding. A bit of a mixed bag of potatoes, some good things, some bad things. If they were to make a new version of it, they would definitely need to just give it a remote control without a wire, with a brake, just like an electric skateboard, so you can dose the braking. They would need to get rid of this brake. As you can see, the braking is not that far off from an electric unicycle. They definitely need to move the valve to a proper spot. And all in all, sadly, the footplates and the ergonomics are not optimal. So Kate was also trying, Monocat was trying to ride on the Dualtron Man. It's not really that easy. It takes some getting used to, and you can easily just hurt your shins here. The position here is very important. The stance is no problem. The shins, and all in all, riding in such a position that the device is always like slightly tilted is just something else. But nevertheless, I think it's a very interesting device. I think it's, if with these couple of benefits, I mean with the couple of changes, they could make something really cool for a special kind of rider that wants something really different out of their PEV with still very, very good performance. But still, in the world where there are electric wheels, which are way more practical, more maneuverable, and easier to carry when you're not riding on them, and in the same price range will have a better performance, this will still be a tough sell in my eyes. So with that said, if you're still here, leave a like on the video, subscribe to see more content like this. I'll see you in the next video. See you soon. Getting there? Więcej podjeżdża niż King. Ow! Here I hit myself
I know.
against something here. Very often. I think this thing should be like covered in foam. All foam. Scooters, so like soft start, hard start. But I found that the soft start, hard start doesn't change really much. Maybe it does, let me see. P7. Chyba muszę test przyspieszenia jeszcze raz zrobić. Kurwa. And with these settings, 0 through 5, you will get a more responsive or a less responsive throttle. Ow! Myślałem, że pojedziesz. Sorry.